Chester observes Wednesday's somber expression on Wednesday and understands. His Majesty's handwriting poses a challenge to decipher, especially for the untrained eye. He decides to read it aloud until Wednesday becomes accustomed to it. Reading the letter on Wednesday, he narrates, "To my lovely daughter, I have yet to meet. I apologize for not being able to greet you in person. You have been on my mind constantly since the moment I learned of your existence. I promise to run to you as soon as I deal with some urgent matters. Until then, I have prepared a little gift for you. Wednesday have gift a seedling." Chester explains to Wednesday that the ancient word for seedling is Clo Scania. That is her name. Wednesday now has a name, Clo Scania. She becomes emotional and teary, realizing she has a name now. She reflects that she never let it show, but she always envied Miriam. Even the flowers on the roadside each had a name, and so did the horses they raised in the stable. Yet she never had one, but that's all behind her now. And most importantly, she has someone who calls her by her new name. Chester comforts Clo, affirming that she is indeed Clo and he is Chester Ascania, her older brother. Clo expresses happiness, saying she's Clo, His Highness. Chester halts, wondering if she said Your Highness, realizing she might not think they're close enough yet. He feels sad and dejected because his sister didn't call him by his name. Suddenly, Chester becomes quiet and withdrawn, which makes Clo a little nervous. She ponders if she did something wrong. Chester realizes with concern that Clo's eyes have turned green, indicating her anxiety. He addresses her, explaining that nobody knows what a young seedling will grow into. It could become a tall tree or flower on the edge of a cliff. He emphasizes that it holds both unlimited potential and hope, and she is the Emperor's. No, their family's glimmer of hope. Chester believes the name His Majesty chose for her suits her perfectly. Clo wonders, expressing surprise that she's happy enough just to have been given a name, but she'd never dreamed she would be complimented on it. Clo expresses excitement, wanting to convey her gratitude to His Majesty and asking when he will be back. Chester reflects, deciding not to tell her that His Majesty is commanding troops on the battlefield. Philip remarks that Her Highness must be exhausted from her long journey. Chester agrees, deciding to let her rest and asking where to take her. Philip informs him that he prepared a room for Her Highness in his palace for now. Chester expresses gratitude, and Philip reassures him that they did their best with the little time they had, but he's not sure if it will be to Her Highness's liking. Clo wonders aloud if she notices everyone inside the palace is a man, questioning if there are no women present. Chester looks at Clo deeply, asking what's wrong. However, Clo doesn't reply because she isn't used to being called by name. Chester calls her again, prompting Clo to realize and reflect that she's Clo. She then asks if the gentlemen are all servants who work in the palace. Philip reassures her that she doesn't need to address them so formally as Her Highness. Chester acknowledges that she's of higher status than the palace servants, with only His Majesty himself and her other brothers having higher positions. He then quietly mumbles that she might even be more important than the Emperor himself. Clo becomes confused. Chester redirects the conversation, addressing her earlier question about the palace servants and asking if something is wrong with them. Clo responds that nothing is wrong, but she's just puzzled by the absence of women. Clo reflects on her past, where female slaves handled all household chores. She notes that it seemed to be the same everywhere else. She wonders if it's different in the imperial palace. Chester responds, stating that women are not allowed there. Clo asks why, and Chester explains it's because of the curse. Clo then inquires about the curse. Clo ponders, recalling the prince mentioning something about the curse the day he came looking for her. She remembers hearing about the curse brought about by the first emperor's evil deeds discussed by the knights near the carriage. They mentioned that the curse over the imperial family would be lifted now that the princess had been found. Clo then asks what kind of curse it is. Chester pauses, halting at this question. He responds hesitantly, and Clo realizes that His Highness looks uneasy. Nervous, Clo expresses that if it's something she should know, Chester doesn't have to tell her. Chester reassures her that she has the right to know, especially because it concerns her the most. However, he suggests it might be best not to reveal everything all at once. As Chester leads Clo to a room, bright light floods in, causing Clo to become confused. Clo ponders as she looks around the room, expressing amazement. Chester asks Philip if this is the best he could do. Philip apologizes sincerely to Her Highness. Chester comments that the layout is inconvenient and the furniture is unsuitable, as everything seems adult-sized. Philip reflects that he didn't expect the princess to be so much smaller than other children her age. He explains that he tried picking a room that wouldn't be too far away from Her Highness's. Chester reflects on how, despite no women ever living in the palace before, they seem to have little sense about how to decorate a room for a little girl. Clo expresses happiness, asking if this is where she'll be living from now on. Chester responds that this is where she'll be staying temporarily and assures her he'll make sure to have her room ready as soon as possible. Chloe ponders, thinking that this room looks more than good enough. Chester calls Chloe's attention, reassuring her that she doesn't need to hide her eyes from anyone in the palace, as everyone will admire them. He then mentions he has some tasks for her. Chloe wonders about the tasks, realizing that nothing comes for free, especially after being given a name. She acknowledges it's only natural to be expected to do something in return. When Chester begins to speak again, Chloe nods in reflection, indicating she's ready to complete any task assigned to her. Chester then surprises her by saying he wants her to eat a lot more, leaving Chloe shocked. Chester states that he wants Chloe to play to her heart's content and sleep as much as she wants. Chloe is stunned and can't believe it, reflecting on how eating more, playing freely, and sleeping as much as she wants are her tasks. Chester explains that he wants her to become as healthy as possible. He affectionately pats her head, indicating that this is her first assignment. At night, Chloe is peacefully sleeping in her room. Suddenly, she wakes up in a panic, jolted with the realization that she needs to hurry and get to work. However, everything is silent. Chloe then realizes this, clutching her doll as she reflects that she still gets panic attacks when she sleeps, even though she's not a slave anymore. She notices the softness of the bed and the comfort of the floor, realizing how different everything is. She recalls her time in the mansion where she worked as a slave, living in a storage room and sleeping on the floor with only straw to keep her warm at night. Chloe reflects on how everyone was so busy trying to survive that they didn't have any time to care about each other, let alone become close. Chloe recalls her childhood with Sunday, noting that they spent their entire childhood together. She wonders if Sunday is doing all right and wishes he would arrive soon because there's something she can't wait to tell him. Her attention is then grabbed by her father's gift, and she opens the box to see her own gift, a seedling. She reflects on how the ancient word for seedling is Chloe. Chloe expresses her desire to tell Sunday about her new name and how blessed she feels to be called by it. She finds joy in calling others by their names too and believes Sunday will need one as well. Excited, Chloe talks to her plush doll, considering asking His Highness for help in coming up with a name for Sunday. She wonders what kind of name might suit him and can't wait to call him by his name. Chloe assures her plush doll that she won't forget about him either. Suddenly, she realizes it's already morning and she got lost in thought without noticing the time passing. Just then, Philip knocks on the door and informs her that breakfast is ready, mentioning she has a busy day ahead of her. Chloe responds affirmatively, indicating she's up and ready. Sitting at the dining table, Chloe wonders about the abundance of food, feeling like there are more and more new dishes every day. Unbeknownst to her, Philip was putting pressure on the palace chef to constantly come up with new and original dishes, and Chester was doing the same. The result was a plethora of extravagant dishes laid out before Chloe every meal. Philip describes the breakfast menu, including a cold soup made from beets, yogurt, and pickled vegetables, as well as salmon steak cooked with turnips and fragrant spices. Chloe is surprised and wonders aloud if it's just her, or if the dishes are becoming fancier by the day. She speculates that perhaps someone else will be joining her for breakfast, pondering if it might be His Highness or the other brothers she has yet to meet. Philip informs Her Highness about her schedule for the day. Chloe nods in acknowledgement. Philip explains that after she finishes eating, there will be some time dedicated to playing, suggesting she can go for a walk in the garden or play with some toys. He offers to have the servants fetch a particular toy if she prefers. Chloe responds shyly, declining the offer for a toy. She reflects on never having had a real toy before, only playing with rocks, broken tree branches, and fallen screws on the ground. She also recalls hardly ever having time to play, only remembering playing with Sunday once. Philip assures Her Highness that she should never hesitate to ask him anything, as he is at her service. Chloe feels shy but brushes it off, not wanting to make herself a nuisance by asking too many questions. Philip reassures her that if she thinks of anything, he's always available, emphasizing that she shouldn't feel ashamed to ask about things she doesn't know, as asking questions is a vital part of learning. Chloe realizes that people won't get mad at her for asking questions here. She thanks Philip and promises to tell him if there's something she wants to know. Philip acknowledges her response. A servant enters and informs Philip that His Highness is looking for him. Philip responds that he'll be right there. Turning to Chloe, he politely asks for her excuse and assures her he won't be long. Philip then goes to meet Chester, informing him of his presence by addressing him as Your Highness. Chester asks Philip how Chloe is doing. Philip responds that Her Highness is currently having breakfast and that the chef seems to have done a particularly wonderful job today, so he is convinced Her Highness will not be disappointed. Chester inquires about the tasks he assigned to Philip. Philip responds that the hairdresser is scheduled to come later today, followed by the tailor who will take Her Highness's measurements. He adds that tomorrow, the court wainer will come to make her shoes. Chester approves and asks if there's anything else. Philip suggests preparing jewelry and toys, planning to hire someone with refined tastes and rich knowledge for this task. Chester gives Philip the authority to make any necessary arrangements if he feels anything else is missing. Philip acknowledges this and addresses Chester as Your Highness. Chester then asks if suitable maids have been found yet. Philip explains that they will be putting up a public notice today and anticipates many qualified candidates eager to apply. Chester agrees, expressing confidence that they will come swarming. Chester reflects on the rule prohibiting women from entering the palace intended as a countermeasure against the curse. Consequently, women who aspired to become an imperial concubine would gather outside the palace walls. Some were ambitious enough to attempt sneaking into the palace disguised as maids. If they became pregnant with the emperor's or one of the prince's children, they could use that as an excuse to try to marry into the imperial family. Chester expresses his disdain for entertaining their feudal ambitions. However, for Chloe's sake, women can no longer be kept out of the palace. Chester acknowledges that they cannot conceal the existence of the imperial princess, noting that people are already gathered outside the palace walls after hearing about yesterday's parade. He mentions that rumors are spreading rapidly among the noble households. Chester reflects on how this situation will impact the future of the empire. Gaydon asks if they plan on releasing guard dogs around the palace. Chester considers guard dogs and notices Colin, reflecting on him. On the journey back to the palace, Colin Nigel managed to come close to Chloe and has even earned her trust. He is also a paladin, a title awarded to only the most talented of knights. Additionally, Colin has 6 younger siblings and loves children. Chester concludes that no one is better qualified to serve as the princess's bodyguard than Colin. Chester calls Colin, who responds affirmatively to his summons. Chester instructs Colin to be the princess's bodyguard, to which Colin bows and accepts the assignment with utmost pleasure before leaving. Gaydon expresses concern, questioning Chester's choice. Gaydon ponders Colin's qualifications for the position, acknowledging its importance. Chester reassures Gaydon that someone will keep an eye on them, especially after Jed arrives. Gaydon reacts with shock to Chester's statement. Gaydon reflects on Prince Jed, the second prince, expressing surprise at the concern the imperial princes now show for each other. He acknowledges that this change is all thanks to Her Highness. Gaydon notes that just as legend predicted, her presence alone is already having a major impact on the family ties of the Ascania imperial household. Chester hands Philip a paper, asking how long it will take. Philip responds that if they hurry, they can get started within a week. Chester glares at Philip, clearly unhappy with his time frame. Philip realizes Chester's displeasure and nervously assures him that he will do his best to get everything ready within the next 2 to 3 days. Philip leaves Chester's office, pondering over the paper. He reflects that first they need to make a call for applications and select the right people for the job, then they have to prepare the building materials. Chester questions Gaydon about the progress of contacting the tower. Gaydon, initially confused, quickly realizes the topic and becomes anxious. He explains that the tower is constantly moving, making it difficult to track its precise location. He mentions that it was last seen 4 months ago near Madrania, and assures Chester that they will do their best to locate it to inform His Highness about the Imperial Princess. Chester expresses his concern about why His Highness would be in Madrania, considering it's a principality located far away from the Balric Empire. He instructs Gaydon to collect as much information as possible. Gaydon acknowledges this and addresses Chester as Your Highness. Gaydon addresses Chester, inquiring about when he plans to tell the princess about the curse hanging over the House of Ascania, which dooms its members to die at the hands of their beloved. Chester reflects on how he had briefly mentioned the curse to Chloe a few times but had never fully explained it to her. Initially, he was waiting for the right timing, but now he's worried that the truth would terrify her. Chester responds to Gaydon, stating that he believes it's still too early to tell Chloe about the curse. Chester realizes that Chloe still hasn't gotten used to her new environment, so he believes it's better to wait until she feels more comfortable before discussing the curse with her. He decides to instruct Gaydon to remain silent about the curse for now and to inform everyone that they are also forbidden from speaking of it in front of her. Gaydon wonders if it wouldn't be better for Chester to tell Chloe the truth as soon as possible. Despite his thoughts, Gaydon nods and agrees to follow Chester's wishes. Suddenly, there is a continuous knocking on the door of the office. Gaydon instinctively draws his sword, ready for potential danger, but it turns out to be a servant who appears a bit nervous. The servant enters and informs Chester that his presence is urgently needed in the dining room. Chester becomes concerned and reflects on the situation, wondering if something happened to Chloe since the dining room is where she is. Anxiously, Chester asks if something happened to Chloe. A cruel tradition exists in the Ascania family. If one wishes to be proclaimed heir to the throne, he must first stab the emperor, in other words, his own father. There was one man who carried out the ritual without batting an eye: Chester Ascania. From a very young age, he was well known for being completely indifferent about most things in life. Some even claimed the crown prince had no emotions at all. Gaydon ponders the situation, noticing something unusual about Chester's eyes. Meanwhile, A servant urgently informs Chester that the princess won't eat her meal. Cole reflects on the passage of time, unsure if it has been 5 minutes or even 2 hours since she began waiting. She decides to keep her eyes closed to avoid feeling hungrier by looking at the food. Despite her hunger, she reminds herself that she has endured days without food before and that at least it's not cold in the room. She finds solace in the comfortable chair she's sitting on and reassures herself that the situation is bearable, considering she has experienced much worse in the past. However, her stomach growls and rumbles loudly due to hunger, causing her to feel embarrassed, hoping that no one heard it. Concerned, Chester enters the dining room and calls out to Chloe. Chloe's face lights up with happiness as she sees Chester and greets him with a smile, addressing him as Your Highness. Upon seeing her smile, Chester pauses, feeling happy and amazed that Chloe's smiling at him. He kneels near her and expresses concern, asking if she feels unwell since he heard she wasn't eating. Chloe reassures him that she's fine. Chester then asks if it's because she doesn't like the food, to which Chloe responds that everything looks very tasty. Chester reflects on the food, admitting that it doesn't look too bad. Chester inquires why Chloe isn't eating, and she explains that she was waiting for him. Understanding her reason, Chester apologizes for being late, mentioning he had some matters to attend to. He realizes that he might need to have meals with Chloe every morning and ideally for lunch and dinner as well. Suddenly, Chloe's stomach growls again, causing her to blush in embarrassment. Chester notices and wonders if the sound came from her stomach. He advises her to start eating first if he happens to be late again, to which Chloe happily agrees. Reflecting on the situation, Chester resolves to try his best not to be late in the future. Chloe asks Chester if anyone else will join them for breakfast, to which Chester responds that it will just be the two of them. Chloe feels a bit upset, hoping she might finally meet her other brothers. She interprets the situation as possibly them not wanting to see her. Chester explains that Jed, her second big brother, is away on a mission and Ezra, her third brother, is rarely at the palace. However, he assures her that she'll get to meet Jed very soon. Hearing this, Chloe becomes happy. Chester expresses that Jed is eager to meet Chloe. When it comes to Ezra, he hesitates. Chloe wonders about Ezra, prompting Chester to explain that Ezra will likely come running once he hears about her, as he'll be very happy to learn he has a little sister. Excited by this news, Chloe confirms and Chester reassures her that she'll be able to meet them soon, asking her to wait just a little longer. Chloe responds with excitement, agreeing to wait patiently. The servant is surprised and can't believe that Chester is personally serving someone else food right now. They find it hard to reconcile with their perception of Chester as heartless and cold-blooded. They question how someone like him could be so considerate of his sister. The disbelief leads the servant to consider visiting a physician to get their eyes checked. Chester asks if Chol needs anything else and wonders if she's still not used to asking for things she wants. Cole starts to speak, surprising Chester, who reflects on whether this is her first request. He eagerly listens, curious about what she's going to ask for. Chester considers various possibilities like a new doll, a dress, shoes, jewelry, or new toys, ready to fulfill her request. Cole asks if Chester could give Sunday a name as well. Chester responds, annoyed by the request, reflecting on Sunday's stubbornness. However, seeing Chol's hopeful expression, he considers her request, unable to resist her puppy dog eyes. Chester agrees to think about it, making Chol happy as she thanks him. Chester questions if that's really all Chol wants and assures her she can ask for anything. As Chol hesitates, Chester reflects on her upbringing, realizing her lack of freedom to wish for anything. He wishes to make her smile and compensate for her lost childhood. Then Chol shows her plush doll, asking if Chester could think of a name for him too. Chester is speechless, surprised by her request for another name. Chester reassures her, saying that he can come up with as many names as needed, but what about her? He urges her to stop thinking about others and focus on her own desires. Reflecting, Chester realizes it's alright for Chloe to be selfish like other children. He questions if there's truly nothing she wants. Chloe fidgets and hesitates before admitting she'd like to learn how to read and write, expressing a desire to explore the unknown. Chester nods in agreement and suggests starting with reading and writing lessons. Reflecting again, Chester decides that should suffice for now. Chester reminds Chloe to set aside time for play, emphasizing balance. He promises to have a library built for her. Shocked, Chloe gasps, realizing she only wants to be able to read books, not have an entire library. Chester realizes he may have misspoken and clarifies that the library is more like a big study with many books, explaining that he and her two other brothers each have one as well. Chester confirms that he'll arrange for a study instead of a full library and promises to begin preparations right away, including finding an instructor for Chloe. Grinning, Chloe expresses her gratitude, unable to believe her luck. Seeing her smile and happiness, Chester wonders to himself that Chloe has finally told him something she wanted. Chester believed that Chloe's study should be more than just a regular library, He resolves to find her the best teacher for subjects like politics, economics, etiquette, and history. Realizing the need for expertise, he decides to bring in someone from the academy. Meanwhile, Chloe happily eats her breakfast, unaware of the plans being made for her education. Chloe meets Colin and becomes ecstatic. She excitedly greets him, and he responds with a respectful greeting, noting the time. Chloe babbles about having lunch with Prince Chester and how delicious the dishes were. Colin is surprised to hear about Prince Chester's involvement. Chloe continues, explaining how Prince Chester filled her plate with tasty food, shared his dessert, and promised to eat with her every day. Colin can't believe what he's hearing about Prince Chester's unexpected actions. Chloe excitedly informs Colin that she has something to tell him. Colin encourages her to share, addressing her as Your Highness. Chloe happily reveals that she now has a name given by her father, the Emperor. Colin expresses his delight and respectfully asks if she would honor him by telling him her name. Finding her adorable, Colin watches as Chloe proudly announces her name as Chloe Scania. Surprised by Chloe's revelation, Colin kneels before her. Colin introduces himself as Colin Nigel, Paladin of the Third Order of Knights assigned to serve as Princess Chloe's personal guard from that day forward. He vows to protect her from any possible harm. Chloe wonders if she understood everything Colin said, but realizes one thing for sure. Colin will be by her side to protect her if anything happens. With a beautiful smile, Chloe expresses her gratitude, thanking Colin for his dedication. Chloe reflects on her desire to stay in her current situation for a long time. She cherishes the thought of eating delicious food every day and sleeping in a warm bed every night, free from any mistreatment or hurtful words. She resolves to stay on her best behavior to avoid being disliked or driven away, determined to make this place her forever home. Colin jokingly questions if Prince Chester harassed Chloe during lunch, but Chloe reassures him that Prince Chester was very nice to her. Colin reflects, unable to believe that Chester Ascania could be kind. Chloe continues, sharing Prince Chester's promise to build her a large study and start her reading and writing lessons the next day. Colin compliments Chloe's intelligence, expressing confidence that she'll learn quickly. Chloe thanks him for his encouragement. As two servants enter Chloe's room with a chair and mirror, Colin remarks that the hairdresser has arrived. Chloe wonders about the hairdresser and frets, concerned if it means she'll have to cut off her bangs. She recalls Prince Chester's words about people admiring her eyes but feels scared to reveal them. Despite her fear, she lacks the courage to refuse cutting her hair, not wanting to inconvenience anyone or be perceived as selfish. Seeing Chloe's unpleasant expression, Colin asks her if she likes her current hairstyle, reassuring her that she doesn't need to change it if she doesn't want to. He emphasizes that no one can force her to do anything and encourages her to speak up if she doesn't want to proceed. Reflecting on Colin's words, Chloe recalls Prince Chester telling her something similar before, affirming that no one could force her to do anything. Upset, Chloe hesitates before asking Colin if her eyes look strange and if he finds them repulsive. Colin reassures her, saying he doesn't find them repulsive at all. Instead, he thinks her eyes are beautiful. Chloe asks him if he really thinks so, to which Colin responds affirmatively, praising the dazzling and pretty colors of her eyes. He assures her that others will think the same way and that no one will find her eyes repulsive. Chloe recalls hurtful remarks from Miriam and her previous master about her eyes, labeling them as bad luck and disgusting. Contemplating, she realizes that neither Prince Chester, Colin, Philip, nor any other servant has said anything negative about her eyes. Feeling confident, she concludes that her eyes might not be a problem in her current environment after all. With newfound confidence, she tells Colin that she wants to cut her bangs. Colin asks if she's sure, to which Chloe confidently responds in the affirmative. Determined to look different, she expresses her resolve. Ulis, the capital of the Baroque Empire, stands as a sanctuary under the protection of an ancient dragon, ensuring peace within the city. With such tranquility, culture flourishes in Ulis with rich offerings in music, art, fashion, and even cosmetology. Among the establishments shaping beauty trends in the capital is Sarah's hair salon. Hairdresser Sarah Meyer can't believe her luck as she prepares to cut the princess's hair. Philip approaches Sarah Meyer and requests her attention. He advises her about the imperial princess Troll, mentioning that she is a sensitive girl, so Sarah should be cautious not to say anything that might offend her. Sarah interprets Philip's words about Chloe being sensitive, remarking to herself that it's another way of saying she's a fussy little brat. She assures Philip that she'll be careful. Sarah contemplates the importance of making a good impression on the first Ascania princess and resolves to be careful. She curtsies and introduces herself to Chloe, expressing her honor to meet her and explaining her role in doing Chloe's hair. Surprised by Chloe's appearance, Sarah remarks to herself that Chloe seems like a well-behaved child. She addresses Chloe, stating that she is at her service. Sarah wonders how different Chloe looks from the crown prince and ponders if she has any Ascania blood in her at all. Chloe greets Sarah with a grin, introducing herself as Chloe. Sarah, taken aback by Chloe's unexpected behavior, observes Chloe glaring at Philip and reflects on Philip's warning about Chloe being sensitive. She can't believe that Chloe's behavior matches the description given to her. Sarah asks if Chloe has a particular hairstyle in mind. Chloe requests that Sarah cut her bangs. Sarah then inquires if there are any other requests. Chloe admits she doesn't know since she's never had a haircut before. As Sarah slides her hand through Chloe's hair, she observes its condition and realizes it's in bad shape. She decides that she'll need to cut more than just her bangs. Sarah informs Chloe that the ends of her hair are badly damaged and suggests cutting off a significant portion. Colin questions if it's too short, but Sarah explains that damaged hair is difficult to fix and it's better to cut it off and let it grow back healthy. While examining Chloe's hand, Sarah notices a mark resembling the ones found on slaves. She recalls seeing such a mark on a slave who accompanied their master to the salon once. Sarah wonders how the symbol ended up on the back of the princess's hand and ponders if Chloe could have been a slave. Chloe expresses confidence, instructing Sarah to cut it all off, noting that hair grows back so it doesn't matter. Sarah hesitates, reflecting on her thoughts and realizing she must remember who Chloe is and treat her accordingly. Chloe bows, accepting Sarah's decision, and Sarah begins to style Chloe's hair as requested. Chloe closes her eyes as Sarah begins her work. Chloe becomes stunned when she sees her new look. Sarah asks Chloe if she likes it and suggests tying her hair with a nice satin ribbon. Chloe stares at the many ribbons available, and Sarah chooses a green ribbon to tie in Chloe's hair. Chloe realizes that the ribbon's color is the same as the seedling she received from the Emperor. Sarah compliments Chloe, saying the color suits her perfectly. Blushing, Chloe thanks Sarah. Sarah asks the gentlemen what they think of Chloe's new look. Philip praises it, saying Chloe looks adorable. While Colin comments that it suits her very well, Sarah feels frustrated, thinking to herself about how men always give the same old compliments. Chloe, feeling shy, asks if they really like it. Colin smiles and confirms, expressing his privilege to be able to see her pretty face every day from now on. Sarah assures Chloe that she's welcome to call on her again whenever she'd like a haircut, promising to ensure Chloe always looks her best. Chloe grins and thanks Sarah for the day, expressing her desire for Sarah to cut her hair next time too. Sarah feels happy, contemplating how adorable it is that Chloe wants her to cut her hair again. She interprets this as Chloe liking her. Philip then interrupts, remarking that it seems Sarah has earned her pay and asking her to come with him. Sarah addresses the Grand Chamberlain, expressing her concern about the symbol on the back of the princess's hand and suggesting that they consider having her wear gloves. Philip is surprised and questions the need for gloves, prompting Sarah to explain that the symbol is not something one would expect to see on a princess. Philip realizes the significance, noting how Chloe always rests one hand on top of the other. Philip offers Sarah a word of advice, suggesting that sometimes it's wiser to feign ignorance on certain matters. Sarah acknowledges his advice but explains that she spoke out of concern for the princess's well-being. Philip reflects on his initial worries upon hearing rumors about Chloe's supposed focus on money, but he observes that Sarah Meyer has already developed a soft spot for her. He acknowledges that Chloe has a knack for leaving a favorable impression on people. Philip expresses appreciation for Sarah's honesty and offers her a position at the palace, requesting her presence every day starting next week to be in charge of Chloe's hair. That's how Sarah Meyer, the best hairdresser in the whole capital, became Chloe's personal hairdresser. Time flew by swiftly after Chloe entered the palace. She wore a new, elegant dress for every day of the week, studied to her heart's content, indulged in all the snacks she wanted, and was granted every toy she could possibly wish for. Best of all, Prince Chester joined her for dinner every day. Before she knew it, a whole month had passed in the blink of an eye. Chloe wakes up feeling happy because she's finally going to see Sunday again. Excitedly, she addresses Sunday, expressing how much she has to tell him. She shares that there's nobody there to hit them or call them names, and they get to eat all sorts of tasty foods. She mentions having a present for Sunday and hopes he'll like it. Philip informs Chloe as he helps her get ready, stating that starting tomorrow, the maids will take care of dressing her. Chloe is shocked and taken aback by this news. Philip explains that Prince Chester ordered to have maids put in her service and assures her that they were each handpicked after going through rigorous tests, so they should be to her liking. Feeling her heartbeat increase, Chloe wonders if this means she'll get to meet new people again tomorrow. A servant knocks on the door, informing Philip that Sir Radvold has arrived with the little boy. Philip confirms that the princess is ready and allows them to enter. Curious and feeling a little nervous, Chloe awaits their arrival. As Sunday enters Chloe's room, she greets him with a happy smile, calling out his name. However, she is shocked when Sunday bows to her. Sunday addresses her formally, expressing it as an honor to see her again. Chloe is left speechless, wondering why he's acting like a complete stranger instead of being happy to see her. Heath scolds Sunday, yelling at him for walking too fast. Chloe thanks Heath for bringing Sunday here, but before he can finish his sentence, Colin punches Heath in retaliation. Heath recoils, exclaiming in pain. Colin, angry, warns Heath to watch his mouth when speaking to the princess. Heath then addresses Chloe formally, introducing himself as Heath Radvolt, Paladin of the Third Order of Knights. Chloe responds politely, expressing pleasure at seeing Heath again and introducing herself as Chloe Scania. Heath observes that Chloe seems to be in higher spirits compared to the first time they met and expresses his delight that she now has a name. Chloe wonders to herself that Heath doesn't seem any different from the first time she saw him, but Sunday does. Despite her thoughts, she addresses Sunday warmly, expressing her joy at seeing him again and inquiring about his well-being. Sunday responds respectfully, assuring Chloe that he's been well and thanking her for her concern. Chloe contemplates her desire to see Sunday smile like he used to and wonders what she should do. She decides to grab his hands and express her excitement, calling him Theo and believing that hearing his new name will make him happy and smile. Chloe explains that Theo will be his name from now on, describing it as an ancient word that means gift of the gods and insisting that it suits him perfectly. However, Sunday, now Theo, remains gloomy, much to Chloe's disappointment. Chloe, unable to understand why Theo looks so gloomy, wonders if he dislikes the name she gave him or perhaps had another name in mind. She offers to change his name if he doesn't like it, but Theo interrupts with a loud gasp, expressing that he loves it. However, his expression suddenly slumps, and he formally accepts the name she bestowed upon him, thanking her. Confused by Theo's sudden change in demeanor, Chloe whispers to Colin for help, expressing her concern. Colin apologizes, stating that he doesn't know anything. Upset, Chloe ponders about Theo during the night, wondering what happened to him. As she falls asleep, she dreams about Theo. In the dream, Chloe calls out to Theo, who responds respectfully. Chloe questions why he's behaving differently and expresses her confusion and concern. She reminds him of their past interactions and asks why he has changed so much and where his smile has gone. As Theo begins to leave in the dream, Chloe pleads with him not to go, calling out his name. She wakes up from the dream, still feeling unsettled by her thoughts about Theo's behavior. Chloe huffs, realizing it was just a dream but feeling unable to go back to sleep. She wonders if Theo hates her now, which is why he spoke to her so politely and wouldn't smile. Determined to see him, she opens the door of her room, expecting to find Colin standing guard, but there's no one there. Despite feeling fearful, she resolves to find Theo and starts walking to search for him. Chloe becomes increasingly panicked when she realizes she can't see the end of the hallway. She starts to worry that she's lost. Chloe sees a tall man is unsure of his identity. He questions her presence, and Chloe reflects on his platinum hair and blue eyes, noting that he doesn't quite resemble Prince Chester, but could it be him? Nervously, Chloe addresses him as Prince Chester. The man smirks and laughs, finding her question amusing and teasingly mentioning telling Big Brother about it. Chloe realizes that if he referred to Prince Chester as Big Brother, then he must be Prince Jed. Chloe asks the tall man if he's Prince Jed. He seems taken aback by her question, but eventually confirms his identity. He then questions what she's doing and expresses disbelief that she could be his little sister, as she looks so different. Feeling disheartened by his words, Chloe droops slightly. Jed continues, expressing amazement at how such an adorable girl like her could belong to their family and speculating that she must take after her mother. Chloe hesitates, unsure how to respond to his comments about her appearance and her family resemblance. Jed affectionately pinches Chloe's cheeks, causing her to yelp in pain. He then stretches her cheeks, commenting on her cuteness, but Chloe protests, asking him to stop. Jed remarks that he wishes her cheeks were chubbier, as they're not very fun to pinch in their current state. He jokes that they need to put some meat on her bones fast. Chloe glares at him, but Jed chuckles and acknowledges her with a smile, then proceeds to introduce himself properly. He reveals that he's Jed Ascania, the second Ascania prince, and pays his respects to Chloe, referring to her as their young savior. Chloe politely responds to Jed's introduction, confirming her identity as Chloe Ascania, Prince Chester's little sister. Jed ruffles her head affectionately, praising her for knowing how to properly introduce herself. Chloe expresses her thanks, but internally ponders Jed's character. Despite his mischievous nature, she doesn't sense any malice from him and doesn't feel any dislike towards him. Jed lifts Chloe up in his arms, causing her to feel nervous. She addresses him as Your Highness, but Jed insists that she call him Big Brother Jed instead, emphasizing the familial bond between them. Chloe hesitantly repeats the title, Big Brother Jed. Jed's face lights up with delight at hearing Chloe address him this way. Chloe is amazed by how much he enjoyed being called Big Brother and notes that he's still beaming with happiness. Feeling surprised and touched by Jed's reaction, Chloe reflects on how she never imagined she could make someone so happy with just a few words. She wishes she could bring joy to everyone around her.